The following podcast by Fusion Family Wealth, LLC, Fusion, is intended for general information purposes only. No portion of the podcast serves as the receipt of or as a substitute for personalized investment advice from Fusion or any other investment professional of your choosing. Please see additional important disclosure at the end of this podcast. A copy of Fusion's current written disclosure brochure discussing our advisory services and fees is available upon request or at www.fusionfamilywealth.com.
Welcome back to another episode of the Fix It Friday edition of the Crazy Wealthy podcast. Thanks for joining us again. The title of the podcast is called Ego versus Family: The Hidden Risk of Do-It-Yourself Investing. So let me ask a tough question today. Are you putting your ego ahead of your family? Not intentionally, not even consciously often, but quietly, unintentionally. Are you making decisions about your wealth that feel right to you, but could leave your family exposed? Because today, I want to talk about two ideas that are deeply connected. The belief that, and I quote, "I can do this myself," and the hidden risks that that belief creates, not just for you, but for the people you care about most.
Welcome to the Crazy Wealthy Podcast with your host, Jonathan Blau. Whether you're just starting out or are an experienced investor, join Jonathan as he seeks to illuminate and demystify the complexities of making consistently rational financial decisions under conditions of uncertainty. He'll chat with professionals from the advice world, entrepreneurs, executives, and more to share fresh perspectives on making sound decisions that maximize your wealth. And now, here's your host.
So let's start off by saying success can become a liability. If you're a successful entrepreneur, executive, business owner, you've earned your confidence. There's no question about it. You've made great decisions. You've had good luck along the way. You've solved hard problems, and you've succeeded where most people have not. But here's where it gets dangerous. That success can create a very specific behavioral bias, and that bias is called overconfidence bias. And in investing, overconfidence is not an advantage. It's a liability. There's a term for what often happens next. It's called epistemic trespassing. It means stepping into a field where you don't have any deep expertise, but assuming that your intelligence alone and success in your prior endeavors is enough to succeed in this field where you have no experience. And in investing is the perfect trap for this, because unlike your business, you don't control the variables, there's no repeatable playbook, and feedback is delayed, sometimes for years. So early success does not prove skill. It often just reinforces the illusion of it. And I'm talking about early success as an investor. So who are the people that are most at risk to this bias, overconfidence? Here's the uncomfortable truth. When it comes to investing, those among the highly educated multimillionaires, the wildly successful entrepreneurs, and the people with no formal financial training at all are not just equally capable of making serious mistakes, but in my experience, the most successful people are often more likely to make those mistakes and to make them more often. So let's ask why. Because success breeds confidence, and confidence in investing often becomes overconfidence bias. When you spent a lifetime being right, it becomes very difficult to recognize when you're in a domain where being right consistently is nearly impossible. And investing is exactly that domain, because investing success is not driven primarily by intellect. It's driven by temperament, by behavior. It's not what we know that counts most. It's what we do. And human nature hasn't changed. It never will. We all respond the same way to fear, loss, envy, regret. And what this means is the person who built a $50 million business and the person with no financial background are both equally vulnerable to selling at the bottom, chasing what's hot, abandoning a sound strategy at exactly the wrong time, not because they lack intelligence, but because they're human, and human nature is immutable. It doesn't change. And in investing, that is what matters most. So let's talk about the illusion of, and I put in quotes, knowing. Now layer on something else, what I call accessibility bias. Today, information is everywhere. You can go on the internet, the computer, you can get information 24/7 from many different sources. Market forecasts, economic predictions, analyst research, stock recommendations. It's instant and it's constant. And it creates a dangerous illusion that because information is available, it's valuable. That because we understand it, we have an edge. And because we have knowledge, we have wisdom, but we don't. And here's the distinction. Data is information. Knowledge is understanding that information. Wisdom is consistently doing the right thing with it. And that last step is where most people break. Because even if you know what to do, executing it calmly, consistently for decades, especially when fear or euphoria take over, is incredibly rare. And this is where another confusion shows up. We tend to overvalue traditional IQ, our ability to analyze, reason, and process information. But investing success depends far more on something closer to emotional discipline. Your ability to recognize fear when it's driving decisions, resist the urge to act on that fear, and stay committed when emotions are pulling you off course. Business success rewards intellect. Investing success requires self-control. That is wisdom, and it's far rarer than people think. Here's the part no one talks about. If we take it one step further, let's assume you're the exception, that the laws of human nature that derail virtually every investor somehow don't apply to you. Let's assume you really can do this successfully on your own. Even then, here's the question almost no one asks. What happens when you're no longer there? What happens if you, God forbid, pass away unexpectedly, become incapacitated, or simply step away from managing things? What happens to your family? Because now they inherit a portfolio they didn't build, a strategy they don't understand, and no framework for how to make decisions. They don't have your experience or belief system. They don't have your conviction. They don't have your perspective. And in an industry where most advice defines safety as avoiding volatility rather than protecting against inflation, they're especially vulnerable to being guided toward the wrong definition of prudence. Too much in bonds, too much emphasis on stability, too much forecasting and predictions going into their strategy, and too little concern for the long-term erosion of purchasing power. In other words, they're left exposed, not because they did anything wrong, but because the system they inherited was never designed to function without the person who bequeathed it to them, the do-it-yourself investor. So in closing, I would say this is why the real question isn't whether you can do it yourself. It's whether doing it yourself is an act of wisdom or an act of ego. Because if your plan only works while you're there to run it, it isn't built for the people you love. And when ego is put ahead of family, even unintentionally, family is the one that ultimately pays the price. Thanks again for tuning into this episode of Fix It Friday. Until next time, stay crazy wealthy. You can reach us on fusionfamilywealth.com, crazywealthypodcast.com, and all your favorite podcast venues.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Crazy Wealthy Podcast. For more insights, resources, and to sign up for our newsletter, visit crazywealthypodcast.com. Until then, stay crazy wealthy.
The previous podcast by Fusion Family Wealth, LLC, Fusion, was intended for general information purposes only. No portion of the podcast serves as the receipt of or as a substitute for personalized investment advice from Fusion or any other investment professional of your choosing. Different types of investments involve varying degrees of risk, and it should not be assumed that future performance of any specific investment or investment strategy, or any non-investment related or planning services, discussion, or content will be profitable, be suitable for your portfolio or individual situation. Neither Fusion's investment advisor registration status, nor any amount of prior experience or success should be construed that a certain level of results or satisfaction will be achieved if Fusion is engaged or continues to be engaged to provide investment advisory services. Fusion is neither a law firm nor accounting firm, and no portion of its services should be construed as legal or accounting advice. No portion of the video content should be construed by a client or prospective client as a guarantee that he or she will experience a certain level of results if Fusion is engaged or continues to be engaged to provide investment advisory services. A copy of Fusion's current written disclosure brochure discussing our advisory services and fees is available upon request or at www.fusionfamilywealth.com.